Welcome back to Third Age Reforged, and unfortunately because of a couple of replays that I went through for some time before realising that they actually fell apart towards the end, so I had to waste essentially my time looking at two replays that weren't actually that great. It does mean that this one's going to come out a little later than I would have wanted, but still, we're here. I mean, if you did want to see how badly a game can descend into a train wreck, I have got one of them saved if people want me to post it, but do bear in mind that it isn't going to be a particularly thrilling experience towards the end if I do. Nonetheless, we'll move on to what I hope will be a better battle. It's certainly got the makings of a good one. We have a 3v4 on Iron Hills, and Iron Hills is not really a map conducive to fully equal 4v4s, mainly because one side gets a pretty big terrain advantage with these cliffs and these inclines and the elevation. It's only really over here where there's a flat bit of field. But nonetheless, we shall see how this goes. I want to see how the defenders deal with the attackers that are arrayed before them, and we'll go through the attackers first. I think I will say that I overshot them. The presence of Gundabad on the attacking team does make me feel as though they're just going to steamroll whoever's in front of them, but nonetheless, I've complained enough about the elves, I think, and it's time to complain a little bit about Gundabad. It's far too easy to just flatten someone who's in front of you when you're using Gundabad, but hopefully they won't have enough money to bring all their best stuff. We shall see. They've got a line of Snaga at the front here that extends over towards the Snaga archers over there. Snaga stalkers are completely free for the first two units. Snaga archers are not, but their ammunition quality isn't too high anyway. We have some Witch Realm Scourge Raiders. These guys are particularly good if you can get them into melee unscathed, but of course they are a bit of a magnet for missile fire because people have figured out at this point that they are definitely a unit you want to go after with archers because they die so quickly, and also they're deceptively good in melee. Back here we have one of the two units which makes Gundabad the powerhouse that they are, in my opinion, the Rudao Berserkers. Alongside the Guardians of Khan Doom, they offer hit point infantry for a very low cost all in all. They're only 800 I believe, and considering their armor piercing as well, they don't have the highest stats, but Gundabad can back them up so easily with stuff that does have higher stats. So we'll see if they can go up against the runic infantry and win. They should be able to. And alongside them we have their brethren from Rudao, the Rudao Savages, of course a fully shock infantry unit. They are lower tier of course, similar in many ways to the Riddermark Axemen, only in my opinion more cost effective, which is all important of course. And then back here we have some Black Uruks of the Mountains, more shock infantry. They share this in common with the Misty Mountains. They can be good if they can get into melee, but of course they are also a unit which attracts a lot of arrow fire. We have more Snaga archers. It does look like actually the attackers have got significantly less money to play with because most of them have got, well, there's a lot of Snaga here at the front and there's some lower tier units. Then back here is where the elites are. It looks like there's only a single unit of Guardians of Khan Doom rather than two. Well, actually no, there are two units of Guardians of Khan Doom, I take that back. And then he's also got both Witch Realm units, so everything I just said, completely disregard that. I think the attackers have got too much money. So yeah, we've got Witch Realm Hammer Guard and the Witch Realm Blackguard, and I know that there's some witches around here as well somewhere. Where are they? I know I saw them. Or are they in here? They might be in there. They might be hidden. Yes, they are. There are the witches. So yes, I do believe that the attackers have got too much money, so I will be rooting for the defenders on this one. You can always tell from the way Gundabad have sort of arrayed themselves. But yes, we can see Isengard played by RTJ. We have some Uruk-hai archers, we have some Dunland clansmen of course. A lot of the lower tier units are going to be at the front of course. Uruk-hai crossbowmen, they're a potentially very dangerous unit. Hopefully this time we'll actually see them in action because they're another unit like the Eldorenway archers which I think have got an exorbitant amount of power to them. Dunland clansmen again, Dunland veterans back here, a good low tier armor piercing unit. We also have more wild berserkers. You don't see these guys actually all that much, mainly because the Uruk Reavers overall are just a better unit, but I do like the Dunland wild berserkers. A lower tier shock unit, and then we have more crossbows, and then back here we have some of the more elite units. So we have the Warg Riders, which is good. Gundabad didn't actually bring any Wargs, so it's good that Isengard have. We've got the Berserkers, very good once they get into melee. Several units of Pikes, going to be very necessary to ward off any cavalry from the other side, and some Nazkai Bodyguard, and some Trolls of the White Hand. Maybe they don't have too much money. Maybe I'm being too quick to judge. Maybe it's just Gundabad being OP. But yes, we have the Misty Mountains, played by Tundra's Fox. Tundra's Fox seems to play the Misty Mountains every time I see him. I know he's played other factions before, I've seen him. But nonetheless, we have some Warg Skirmishers, we have some Heavy Goblin Crossbows, going to be very useful at dealing with enemy cavalry that comes too close to the Orc lines down here. And then we have some Heavy Goblin Archers, Heavy Goblin Halberdiers, and Heavy Goblin Spears making up the front lines. That's a good first wave to send in. Then he's got some mountain trolls, some orc bodyguards. The Blackwatch Legion back here are going to be very effective. Excuse me. And yeah, the Blackwatch Legion are going to be able to force their way through a defensive position pretty easily, and I assume there are Blackback Berserkers hidden. In fact, yes, there we are. Blackback Mountain Berserkers. I knew they'd be hidden. They're always brought. And then we have Frisch Juice playing as Mordor, several units of Uruks, Orc Fodder. He's got the Balrogs. If they're supported, they can be a real menace, but if they're not, they can die off just as quickly as normal trolls. Then we've got Sauron's Will, Mordor Morannon Uruks. He's got some Sauron's Will, Temple Inquisitors, and some Uruk Archers back here, and the Numenorean Shadow Guard, and the Temple Guard. So he's got a decent skirmish force. Now we move on to the defenders, and over here we can see that there's a very narrow pathway leading up here, which Mordor could choose to take, being defended by Gondorian Smith. So Gondor is really sort of parking themselves in this gap, and we have 2 units of Shielded Fountain Guard. And the Shielded Fountain Guard will do a very good job against all of the lower tier orcs, because any armor values they have will be completely taken away. They will struggle a little bit more against the heavy duty stuff, particularly something like Temple Inquisitors. Then we have some Gondor Militia just filling out the ranks. Then he's got 2 units of regular Fountain Guard, a little bit more attack focused. Good to see them. He's also got some Javelins, the Pelagia Marines, and in this position could be very useful, although he has got to be careful of the Mordor Archers. They're deceptively good. Then he's obviously got some Gondor Infantry. Can't have a Gondor force without their standards, so we've got more Gondor Infantry behind these Lasarnak Nobles. One of the very few attack-minded units in Gondor's roster, and they do a very good job at it as well. We've also got some Wardens of the White Tower over there. More Gondor Infantry back here, 3 units of. And then we've also got the Sons of Argonath. And then I believe there's also a couple of units over here. Indeed, we've got some Veterans of Osgiliath up on this ridge, which can't be reached by the attackers directly, so they're going to have to accept the fire that they're going to be taking, and the Veterans of Osgiliath are strong enough to stand up to Mordor skirmishers with the shields and the hit points. And then over here we have the other highly defensive position, Bobo 16k playing as the Dwarves. And this is going to be... Someone did request the Dwarves, so I'm glad that they're here. So we have several units of Ironfoot Pikemen and Ironfoot Warriors. This is going to be a very difficult position to try and force, for the Orcs to try and force their way through. The crossbows are going to be very necessary to get through here. Then we have the Ironfoot crossbows here from the Dwarves to try and dissuade that. Some Ironfoot Warriors as well. More Ironfoot Warriors and more crossbows. And then back here, in a little bit more of a covered position, we have the Dwarven Elites. Of course, we have the Mithril Guard. We have the Guards of Khazad-dûm, which is where King Dane resides. And then we have the Sons of Durin, as well as some Hammers of Gundabad, and then 2 units of Erebor Infantry. And now, the faction that I worry for quite a bit, we have Rune here on the open field, and they're going to get double teamed by Isengard and the army of Gundabad hard. Dark Elven King has got it all to do. He's got some clansmen, which are not going to do a very good job against the forces arrayed against them. The Lokflagrim will, though, and the Swift Blades will do a half-decent job against the lower armoured stuff. He's also got some crossbows and some Scion Rim, which will hold the line, and then several units of Gamp Rim. They will do very good as long as they're not flanked, but I don't think they have the numbers to protect them. Then we have more Lokflagrim, a Catapult. He's also got some more Lokflagrim there. He's got some Cummels Chosen, and then some Clansmen. And then he's got the Dragon's Wrath crossbowmen. I think he's missed a bit of a trick here in this open field. Considering the lack of Gundabad cavalry, he would have been much better served bringing some Dragon Knights and some Innis Rim to really wreak some havoc. But as it is, I think Gundabad and Isengard are going to squash him. But let's see how this goes. Here we go. Now, I do think that Gundabad do need to really rush forward here, because in terms of the skirmish, they don't stand a chance. Those Snaga Archers are not going to do a particularly good job, and in fact, Rune is very rapidly turning their backs to Isengard and to Gundabad. Now, I can see why. Retreating rapidly to that wide choke point over there is going to be a good move. This catapult is never going to be able to get away, though. Isengard is absolutely going to send forward their wargs to deal with that. Of course, it might be a worthwhile thing to just leave the catapult here and let the crew run back and maybe retrieve it later in the battle. We shall see. He's got some Shadow Guard there. Again, I'm rather surprised actually that the Isengard wargs are not charging forth. Most curious indeed. Here we have some Nar Rim. I could have sworn I saw a hidden unit over here reveal itself just then. Have they got some Wardens of Minas Ithil? Possibly. But anyway, The action is not going to start over there for some time. The Mordor orcs and the orcs of the Misty Mountains will have to maneuver themselves a little bit. It's possible actually the attackers are going to let Rune retreat from this position, which is very sporting, because this wouldn't have been much of a match if Rune had been smashed and then the dwarves were attacked in the rear. We shall see. Rune still have the hardest task in my opinion. They've got the widest choke point to cover, and they have to go up against Gundabad and Isengard, both of which are very capable at smashing through a line very adeptly. Having said that, Rune are not half bad themselves. Rune are definitely one of the stronger factions in the current iteration of the game, I would think. And I believe they are intended to be the all-rounders of the evil faction, in the same way that Arnor are the all-rounders of the Kingdoms of Men. At least that's going to be the basic idea. Rune do need to get their skirmish forces ready. I mean, that catapult is still lagging pretty heavily behind. Let's see what's going on over here, though. You can see that these orc fodder are moving forward. And of course there are some Athelian rangers up there, but very wisely Gondorian Smith is deciding not to shoot the orc fodder. You never want to shoot orc fodder if you can help it. They're going to have to go into the Shielded Fountain Guard, and the Shielded Fountain Guard will take like no losses from that. Maybe a bit of hit point damage, but very, very little. Well, let's go back over to here, shall we? You can see those lesser Balrogs are coming over here. So this is more bad news for Rune. Rune definitely need to form up their line very, very quickly. You can see Gundabad's forces are just advancing forward. Not good. Again, they do have the Dragon's Wrath crossbowman, and if they are used to their full effect, the fiery ammunition of death or the splinter shot, they can very quickly make quick work of the initial attack or the secondary wave. Definitely better to save your ammunition in something like this. We can see actually that Bobo 16k has sent over some reinforcements. Some Ironfoot crossbowmen are being committed over here as well, which is very worthwhile. Rune probably wouldn't be able to hold this flank all by their lonesome. And in fact, it might be worth bringing over some of that elite dwarven infantry as well, because the attackers are going to have a very tough job getting up through there, as it is. But over here, this is where the weakest part of the line exists right now. And in fact, I think I will make a small cut until the action begins. So in fact, the Misty Mountains are going to be the ones to make the first move against the dwarven position, no less. Certainly the hardest one to take, in my opinion. We also have some Snaga skirmishers coming up. The Snaga skirmishers could potentially be a very useful unit here. Even if they just take ammunition from the crossbows, it's not really the most high value target the dwarves are killing, but if they don't do anything, they could potentially cause a bit of damage to that dwarven front line. We shall see. Snaga skirmishers, of course. Definitely one of those units that you can pick up for not a lot of florins, and they'll do a job for you. Most of the Snaga are like that, honestly. The Snaga stalkers are not honestly as bad as people may think. Despite being free, they are better than the orc fodder. Which I know isn't the biggest accomplishment, but nonetheless. You can see actually these dwarven warriors are just sort of coming out of their formation, because these Snaga skirmishers are going to get some point-blank shots, and against the pikemen they could do quite a bit of damage. Actually, they are going for the warriors, it looks like. Those javelins are going all over the place. You can see actually that Gondorian Smith, as a result of Mordor not really going that direction, Gondorian Smith is able to bring over a lot more infantry to reinforce. And now there's a lot of missiles raining down the veterans of Osgiliath, getting into position and shooting to help his ally out. Don't want to expend crossbow ammunition on Snaga after all. Meanwhile, over here, you can see that Rune have been able to form up a good front line. The Gamp Rim interspersed with some clansmen to give some extra mass. As we can see, the runic catapult was able to retreat, and I do believe that the attackers did actually let the defenders get this back in. However, the catapult is not likely to last very long under that kind of firepower. You can see the Rudar savages, the first ones in. And while they may get some damage done off the initial charge, the pikes are going to quickly force them back. Having said that, the Gundabad player, Master Blaster, is being quite aggressive. He's going to send forward his Rudar Berserkers as well. Defeat is instantly seeming certain for the Rudar savages. Now the Berserkers are moving in. Again, dealing with the Gamp Rim when they've got their pikes set up is a difficult task, no doubt about that. Trying to see those artillery shots as they land. As we can see, Rune have got a very long and thin line to try and deal with over here. The Scourge Raiders' defeat seems certain for them, but then there's Gamp Rim. The Gamp Rim all along this line will hold for a while. But they won't be able to hold back against all of Isengard and all of Gundabad. Eventually there will be some give in this line. Fortunately there are some flag rim to come and reinforce this. Let's go and see what's going on over here though. Because now there is also a fight to be held on the Dwarven front. Now Orc Fodder is leading the way alongside Snaga Skirmishers. The Snaga Skirmishers are still firing though, trying to get some of that damage done. You can see that some Gondor infantry is sort of shoring up the line, and this is going to allow some of the Dwarven units to push forwards and deal with some of this fodder, trying to get to those Snaga Skirmishers, trying to prevent them from throwing their jabbies. And of course these Ironfoot warriors would carve their way through lower tier Orc units like this, no problem at all. And in fact, instead of sending forward more dwarves, Gondorian Smith is going to send forward some of his own infantry, and they will do just as well against low tier units. Of course, as a unit, the Gondor infantry is not as good as the Ironfoot warriors, at least in the current patch, but they will still do a job against low tier orcs. You can see that there is skirmish fire coming in, but it's only really from heavy goblin archers, I believe. Actually, no, Numenorian Shadow Guards. They will do some decent damage to the pikes, but even so, the dwarves, unless it's armor-piercing arrows, not really going to do an awful lot to most of the high-tier Dwarven units. This is turning into a two-front battle. The frame rate's a little choppy, unfortunately. You can see actually over here that with the mass, this section of line was forced through, and these Black Uruks leading the way. The Carmel's Chosen are actually being committed over here, alongside some Erebor infantry and some Flag Rim, so they're very keen to make sure this line holds up for a little bit longer. And the Black Uruks may have forced their way through, but under this kind of pressure, with several elite units and several higher mid-tier units coming in, they won't be able to last much longer. The Snaga Archers firing, going to be doing a decent amount of damage to Clan Crossbows, honestly. That's a good engagement for them. And again, there are Dunland Clansmen and Rudar Savages coming in. There's actually Guardians of Khan Dûn as well. So you can see that where the line is broken, the attackers are going to be very eager to force their way in through that gap. Is that a Berserker? Yeah, there are Berserkers in here as well. So there's a lot of high tier units, but they are blobbing a little bit. You don't want to blob too heavily. As soon as you push through with mass, you want to let your elites do the dirty work, as it were. There are some Hammers of Gundabad coming in here as well, trying to hold back the advance of these Rudar Berserkers and Dunland veterans. Their armor-piercing talents are kind of wasted on units like this. They'd be much better off against the Guardians of Khan Dûn, to be honest with you. Well, they're over here. And you can see now the second wave, Isengard are really starting to commit forward pretty heavily. The Uruk-hai infantry coming in, adding another dimension to the attack. The Scion Rim are having to be committed. You can see that elsewhere the line is holding, but it is very thin. And I think actually seeing the thinness of the line over here is why the Scion Rim are coming over to reinforce this Erebor infantry, because the Black Uruks, backed up by the Uruk-hai infantry and the Dunland Clansmen, are really making their presence felt there as well. And they can't afford their line to get too thin. If we zoom out a little bit, we can see how the line is sort of evolving, and in fact here come the Lesser Balrogs. The Lesser Balrogs will be able to force their way through without too much issue, and then they'll be able to get into the missile units of Rune. In particular, the crossbows will be a high priority target. I'm forgetting how to English today. They don't really want to stay in melee too long against Scion Rim. Scion Rim are armor piercing, which is a very useful trait to have. But the Lesser Balrogs will force this line to crumble as well, and they do need reinforcements. And in fact, over here you can see Gondorian Smith sending forward some of his forces to try and deal with this. You can see that the Balrogs just force their way through the line. And Clan Crossbows and Loknar Rim don't stand a chance in melee against them. Over here the line is holding, but then only a single unit of Scourge Raiders and Black Uruks was committed over here. And now that the Snaga Archers are out of ammunition as well, just to keep the line occupied, just so that the Runic player can't bring these Gamphrim away. And you can see this is the problem with having pikes in a long and thin formation at the front. They can be buckled very, very easily. In sustained melee, provided they can get their pikes down, it's fine, but they do need support, and unfortunately Clansmen just weren't the kind of support they needed against a push like this. Meanwhile, if we look over here, we can see that not really a lot of progress has been made by the attackers over here.
They have lost half their men.
So that would be Rune, I imagine. But yes, these Orc Maulers will do a slightly better job. They'll get some. They are inflicting some casualties on the Ironfoot warriors and the Gondorian infantry, but they aren't going to break through here anytime soon. Not with these units here. But then the Dwarven defense is looking a little bit more thin on the ground now, and you can see that heavy Goblin spears are being committed forward. as well as some of the Isengard units and Gundabad, which were brought over here. The really high tier dwarven stuff is... Actually, it looks like it might have been committed. Or is it retreating? Let's see, Fountain Guard, Gondor Infantry, Sons of Argonath. No, it might have been committed over here. Did Bobo commit his highest tier units? Yes, he did. The Mithril Guard are over here, as are the Guards of Khazad Dûm. These are the kind of units which can stabilise a line. However, the Uruk-hai infantry is now being reinforced by Uruk-hai pikemen, so the orcs are not going to go away anytime soon. Certainly you can see the slight choppiness to the frame rate as a result of the giant engagements which are happening. You can see the Carmel Shadow Guard have been brought in. There's also some more Gondorian infantry trying to reinforce the line. Over here you can see where it's getting a little bit thin on the ground as well, these Gamp Rim. Victory seems certain, but they're very tired. You can see actually that the Balrogs, only 4 of them left, so the Balrogs did take a decent amount of damage as well. The problem that they will have is where a line gets thin, these Warg Riders will be able to punch right through and then get some rear charges. The Mountain Trolls are coming forward, the Gondor infantry's presence is going to be required to help deal with them. Again, aggressive use of the Trolls, I like this. Tundra's Fox, I like how each player is committing their units to different fronts as well, depending on what's needed. I like the fact that we've seen sort of Misty Mountains units over here, Gundabad units over on the Dwarven front. Well, we can see the Carmel Shadow Guard, the Mithril Guard. Victory seems certain over here, but they're not going to be able to get rid of these Uruk-hai pikemen too quickly unless they target them with missiles. Again, the Uruk-hai are actually starting to flag a little bit now. You can see that the addition of this high-tier Dwarven infantry has changed the dynamic somewhat. And you can see that the Lok Sion Rim have also done some work. Meanwhile, the Dragon's Wrath crossbowman are over here, and they are the subject of the Uruk-hai archers and the Uruk-hai crossbows' attention, rightly so. Are they going to use their ammunition though? That is the question. Looks like they're just sort of standing here, which is not the right thing at all. I mean, if they're being targeted, they need to run away or just use their ammunition. One or the other. The veterans of Osgiliath are firing away. You can see over here that the Erebor infantry have also been a big factor. A bit of tearing actually as I turn the camera. That's right, quite unfortunate. As we can see, the Erebor infantry victory seems certain. The pikemen over here, their formation has been largely buckled. And over here, the Flag Rim. A lot of the runic units are very depleted at this point, and in fact over here you can see where the Mountain Trolls force their way through. This unit of Loknar Rim is being taken care of in melee. That's another one of the runic skirmishes which is going to have felt the pressure on this front. But in terms of the melee fight, it does look as though the defenders are going to hold over here. And the Wargs are actually going to retreat for the time being. They don't want to come under archer fire after all. There are Temple Guard. Actually, no, they're turning around. Are they going to try and force their way through this narrow section of line? It could work. You can see it's only Gondor infantry over here, so it's not exactly going to be a huge amount of damage that they're going to be inflicting in return, but then the Wargs are not great in sustained melee with infantry. All of the archers being brought over here, the Númenórean Shadow Guard, the Uruk-hai crossbows, the Temple Guard are even over here. They're a very good unit in melee as well. And you can see over there that there's a lot of the Mordor forces being brought over here as another wave. We'll see how that goes. Meanwhile, over here, the line has been forced back to where it was initially. So we can see that Mountain Orc Berserkers, there's some Rudau Savages in here and some Heavy Goblin Spears. They have forced the Gondorian and the Dwarven infantry back a little bit. The Pikes are still not engaged. Actually, no, the Pikes are engaged a little bit. So the Pikes are going to be here. So this is the Dwarven line. They can't afford to lose this position either. They do need to keep some reinforcements on hand just in case of a big push. Some more Heavy Goblin Spears and some Orc Maulers there. These Ironfoot Warriors ready. We'll see what's going on over here as well. Well, actually over here there is actually an engagement. The Gondor Militia and the Orc Fodder, the Battle of the Low Tier Trash is happening. And it's actually a battle the Gondor Militia will handily win, of course. The Gondor Militia are not bad as far as militia goes. They're the one unit from the Kingdoms of Men Militia, which are not spears, I believe. And they do a job against low tier units like this. Of course, anything that's slightly higher than militia tier, Gondor Militia will not win at all. Meanwhile, if we look over here, there's actually some Fountain Guard that have been committed. What happened to the Wargs? Did they get through? They did. So the Wargs are now running amok in the skirmishes. They do need to commit on a target though, otherwise they will find themselves trapped in melee with something like Sons of Durin, which they don't stand a chance, of course. Oh, they're going for the Dragon's Wrath crossbowman. It's a very worthwhile target to go after indeed. Just a few more kills. Well worth their time. Again, the Dragon's Wrath crossbows are going to be a magnet for all sorts of pressure. If you can protect them, though, they can win you the game all on their own. Here we have the Dunham veterans. Yeah, the attackers' lines are starting to thin out over here. I think that Gundabad led the way with some of their units, which weren't really designed to deal with pikemen. The Brudauer savages, definitely not. See the Loke Scion Rim. There actually are still some Dunham units, and as soon as I say that, they rout in the face of the very elite Fountain Guard. So yeah, it's not looking good for the attackers over here, because really all they've got left are skirmishers, and if the defenders decide to counter-attack, all of these skirmishers are going to find themselves thoroughly outclassed in melee. See, the Nazkai bodyguard are actually retreating, and all of the wargs behind the line have been dealt with. There are still the lesser Balrogs over here. The initial line of Gamprim still stands strong. Interesting to see what the attackers will do next, because they definitely need to sort of reorganise and go at the defenders again, because they have dealt some attritional damage to all of these high tier units which managed to stabilise this line. We'll see. Again, the Mithril Guard will carve their way through most of these skirmishes. These crossbows need to get some good volleys off on these units. That Mordor reinforcement corps, which it looks like they stopped. Actually, no, they're over here. So Mordor have sent forward some reinforcements, and they are badly needed. The Sauron's Will are here. Sauron's Will not to be taken lightly, and they're going to finish off what little remains of the Hammers of Gundabad. And before the Scion Rim can deal with them, the Mordor Morannon Uruks are also going to come in here and reinforce, despite the fact that Isengard's men are kind of running for the hills at this point. We can see that those Uruk archers, and we can see the lesser Balrogs are coming in as well. The guards of Khazad-dûm, which is the Dwarven General unit, is going to be engaged by what remains of the lesser Balrogs. Just knocking them over mostly, managing to get a single kill. As you can see, the attackers trying to use their skirmish power here. Whether they will be able to remains to be seen, and we can see the Nazkai bodyguard being committed now alongside the Mordor Morannon Uruks. This is where the fight could turn around again. These Mordor reinforcements were badly needed, and alongside what remains of the attacking units over here, they could still inflict a good amount of damage to Rune and the dwarves. You can see the retreat of the skirmishers is still going on. They're trying to kite, I suppose, the Mithril Guard, which they will be able to, and the guards of Khazad-dûm. The Temple Guard are also over there. What's left of the Balrogs trying to sort of disrupt the advance. You can see that more Gondorians are on their way over here, though, the Lasarnak nobles and more Gondor infantry. Some Uruk-hai pikemen being committed forward, and victory seems certain for the Nazkai bodyguard. Now that they are supported in melee, they can be so deadly. Alongside those Morannon Uruks. And here are the Sauron's Will. Sauron's Will doing a good job against what remains of the Carmel's Chosen, of course, because the Sauron's Will, not the most heavily armoured unit. Similar to the Berserkers, the hit points is what gives them all of their survivability. So the Carmel's Chosen not able to get their AP damage down reliably. Meanwhile over here you can see that the veterans of Osgiliath are being committed to melee. There are the Dragon's Wrath crossbowmen managing to get a kill on that single troll. Not really the most worthwhile use of their ammunition. They should definitely be shooting into the blob of Sauron's Will and Morannon Uruks if they're going to be shooting at all at this point. They only get 2 of those flaming volleys, remember. Are they going to fire? I don't want to get too close to them just in case they crash my game. See that Gondor bringing forward some serious reinforcements in the shape of those Sons of Argonath. At this point, with how many men Gondor have committed over here, they might want to go to the far left-hand side of the map and try their luck over there, the attackers. In fact, we can see that there are some warg skirmishers being sent over with some Snagar archers from Gundabad and the Misty Mountains. It would seem actually the Dragon's Wrath crossbows are using their splinter shot, so I don't need to worry. We can see the Carmel's Chosen largely being dealt with. They are now being reinforced by the Fountain Guard, but defeat is still a distinct possibility because of those Nazkai. Still crossbow ammunition flying. In fact, we can see the Sons of Durin. Victory is a distinct possibility over here now, supporting those veterans of Osgiliath. Exactly the sort of thing you wouldn't want to see if you're the attackers. Meanwhile, if we look over here, the Temple Guard, the balance of forces is evenly matched. Fighting the guards of Khazad-dûm, they're now being supported by Snagar archers that are out of ammunition. That could make the difference in this situation. The guards of Khazad-dûm are pretty thoroughly outnumbered, but just as I say that, Gondorian Smith reinforces the line with some Lasarnak nobles and some Gondor infantry. They need to reinforce this Temple Guard. At this point the attackers need their elite units to do some work, and the Temple Guard are likely to be overwhelmed here. The Uruk-hai crossbows are in the background along with the archers doing some work. The Uruk archers are out of ammunition and are now in melee against the Mithril Guard. At least I assume they're out of ammunition. Numenorian Shadow Guard as well. These Warg skirmishers need to throw their javies pretty quickly. Let's go and see what's happening in the middle Dwarven front. Over here the attackers are having a little bit more luck. The Witch Realm Blackguard have been committed, and the Witch Realm Hammer Guard. So over here the defence could actually crumble. Gondor infantry and Ironfoot pikemen are not going to be a match for the highest tier of Gundabad's infantry. The Witch Realm units certainly earn their keep in a situation like this, carving their way through heavily armoured units. It's exactly the sort of fight they like. Meanwhile, if we look over here, you can see that the attackers have got some sort of presence over here. Heavy Goblin Halberds, Heavy Goblin Crossbowmen and Blackwatch Legion are on the way. And with all of that, they could be able to force their way through the Shielded Fountain Guard with the crossbows and the Blackwatch Legion, and then with the Heavy Goblin Halberdiers they could reinforce. There's still a pretty serious Gondor force over here though. Wardens, the White Tower and Fountain Guard still find themselves at home. And over here though, the chaos, the battle lines have largely been abandoned at this point. There's still a slight battle line going on over here. I can only apologise for the slight chop in the game, but it can't be helped. There's only so much I can do to mitigate that, unfortunately. You can see that these Morannon Uruks and the Sauron's Will doing their best alongside the Nazkai bodyguard, but defeat is starting to look certain. And now we can see Nazgul from Frish Juice. That will turn the fight back in the other direction again. No units over here can really go toe to toe with the Nazgul, but unfortunately if we look over there, the Sons of Durin and the veterans of Osgiliath have crashed their way through the lines with the help of those Ironfoot crossbows, and now they'll be able to get in behind the Sauron's Will. In fact, it looks like they're going to chase down the Uruk bodyguard from Mordor, but there is more Mordor reinforcements on the way, which is good to see. They're continuously committing to this front, because over here now, with all of the gaps, with the numbers the attackers have, they could take advantage of this. You can see that the skirmishers are still trying to get away and kite the Gondorian infantry. The Mithril Guard are way out here. The Warg skirmishers, I think, are throwing their javelins into the side of the Mithril Guard, which they are. The Mithril Guard find themselves horribly isolated at this point. And just as I say that, the Temple Inquisitors are on the way to really put an end to them. There's also Uruk-hai crossbows, so yeah, Bobo definitely chased too far. There's a point where going after the skirmishers is not going to be worth it, and now the Mithril Guard are going to die. I'm actually very confused as to why the Temple Inquisitors are not engaging them. That could be a horrible mistake. You can see there's still some flag rim. There's also guards of Khazad-dûm. The Dwarven General still lives. And then over here, you can see that these Lok Gamp Rim are moving forward. They're going to be engaged by Uruk archers. These Gondorian infantrymen going up against the Uruk archers and the Temple Guard. The Temple Guard's presence over here means that the Gondorian infantry will fall. And in fact, there goes the Isengard General at the hands of a Lassarnak noble. So the Nazkai General has died. Now, actually, if we look over here, the Nazgul surrounded the position over here, but now they have been re-surrounded. So the Erebor infantry are going to do a decent job, but now the Temple Inquisitors are coming up here, so I imagine it's to try and pull the Nazgul out to the fire. The Temple Inquisitors will once again tilt this fight back in the favour of the attackers, it must be said. Madness. And now we have another line of Uruk bodyguard and standard Uruks coming over here to try and overwhelm the Sons of Durin, and with all the attrition they've taken, it might be enough. Sons of Durin will definitely reap their toll though. Now if we look over here, we can see the guards of Khazad-dûm again kind of being kited around, but as we can see over here, oh, there goes the Mordor General. Yeah, the Nazgul caught out by the Sons of Argonath and the Erebor infantry. The Witchers are moving over here. Are they going to fire there? They are. So it looks like they're going to grill the Mithril Guard, because they did catch up to the Uruk-hai crossbows and the Snagar archers in the end. Go on, Witchers. They're reloading. I don't want to get too close. This will be just what they need. Oh, come on, make up your mind. I need to stay over here now, just to see the Witchers do their thing. See the guards of Khazad-dûm trying to get in behind that Uruk bodyguard. They will do a very high amount of damage. The Warg skirmishers moving around to try and flank. You can see over here the heavy goblin crossbowmen waiting in reserve, waiting to loose their payload. The Witchers firing their ammunition at last. Mostly friendly fire as well. The witches need to hurry up and use their ammunition quickly. Otherwise they will be taken apart in melee by the Mithril Guard. But yeah, the Mithril Guard are going to... Yeah, that was a nice hit. That's pretty much all the Mithril Guard dealt with at this point. So that's one of the high tier Dwarven units gone. You can see that these Uruk-hai crossbows are moving up. Hopefully they will have ammunition still. The Uruk-hai crossbows have got near limitless amounts of ammunition. Numenorian Shadow Guard, the Fountain Guard is surrounded, but victory still seems certain. At this point, the attackers are running out of juice on this front. Now we'll move over to the centre, however. How are things going over here? We can see Uruk Halberds are being sent forward. What is going on over here? They've been grilled, and it's because of the Dragon's Wrath crossbowmen. So the Witches and the Dragon's Wrath crossbowmen doing their thing in this battle, but they've got charged by the Warg skirmishers, so they are being distracted once more. They need to keep up that cycle charging, because over here is honestly their best bet of punching through the defenders now. You can see the Gondor infantry defeat seems certain. The Ironfoot warriors defeat is a distinct possibility. These Witch Realm units have done some real heavy lifting, but they are starting to burn out now. And there is still another unit of Ironfoot warriors and Ironfoot pikemen. So these Uruk Halberds are badly needed on the front. Over here though, finally, we do have an engagement with Palagia Marines. Not sure if they got caught out. I think they have done some damage to the Heavy Goblin crossbowmen have been skirmished down pretty effectively, so I assume the Athelian Rangers are still over here somewhere. Or perhaps it was the Javelins? Although I somehow doubt it, but yeah. The presence of the Blackwatch Legion and the Heavy Goblin Halberdiers honestly should be enough to punch through the shielded Fountain Guard wall. The Gondor infantry in the background will do their best to make sure that the Blackwatch Legion can't just crumple the line, so it'll be interesting to see what happens over here, because at this point the attackers need a result on some front. And I'm not sure it's going to be over here. Defeat is a distinct possibility. The Numenorian Shadow Guard, the Temple Inquisitors, the defeat is a distinct possibility for them. It's not often you see that. The Fountain Guard and the Sons of Argonath holding their ground in the face of the Mordor elites, although I do think this will flip back into the other position, but I don't think the attackers are going to have enough to really flank around and do any serious damage. And there are still stragglers as well. Erebor infantry, victory is a distinct possibility for them. What are they fighting? Berserkers, it looks like. No, Nazkai bodyguard. What's left of them is going up against the Erebor infantry. They still have some Ironfoot crossbows. Gondorian Smiths, Athelian Rangers being moved over. The Uruk-hai crossbows firing their ammunition into these Ironfoot.
Only half the enemy force remains.
Doing a good amount of damage there. At this point we are past the halfway point. Let's have a look at the percentages of kills. So more attackers have died, but it is close, so it is going to be a close run thing. You can see these Witches are coming forward. Uruk archers are going to get around, charging to the side, offer up a little bit more chaff in this fight, but the Sons of Durin and the Sons of Argonath are still very much alive. And that's why the Temple Inquisitors are struggling. The Witches are honestly needed. You can see that the Temple Guard are also over there. A lesser Temple Inquisitor unit, if you will. Are they going to fire their missiles? They are. Uruk Bodyguard. The Witches could do a ton of damage, and I think the Sons of Durin have noticed them because they're trying to wriggle out. Are the Witches going to do their damage? If it's going to be any time, it really does need to be now. Yeah, they're going to go around to the other side. The Temple Guard also going to be joining this melee of elites at this point, other than the Uruk archers, of course. The Uruk archers' victory actually seems certain now, and in fact the Uruk-hai crossbows are in position. They're going to shoot point blank, so the Witches, their ammunition might not even be needed here. It might be worthwhile to try and save it. In fact, the Mordor forces are actually running away, so at this point the Witches do need to use their ammunition because Mordor have clearly retreated with them in mind. And there they go, bisecting the Sons of Durin. Not many kills actually, to be honest with you, but it won't matter. So the attackers will finally break through over here. You can see where the initial line was. Rune, I think, held out remarkably well considering they were put under a great deal of pressure from the off. And the reinforcements from the dwarves in Gondor were sorely needed. Meanwhile, if you look over here, the defenders will win over here. The attack over here has kind of run out of steam. You can't really see because of all the dead bodies on the floor. But yeah, the Witch Realm units, now that they are gone, the Ironfoot warriors will be more than enough to deal with the standard Uruk halberds and the heavy goblin spears. Let's go and have a look over here though. We can see actually that the Blackwatch Legion are not able to really force their way through here. I don't know if they were in shield wall or what. But also the lack of the heavy goblin crossbows. I haven't seen the blackback berserkers yet. It's possible they went into the middle and died. But the blackback berserkers, they might well be needed to punch through over here, because the shielded fountain guard and the Gondor infantry and the Lasarnak nobles are holding fast. And there are some javelins being thrown in as well. So Gondor is going to win over here. And they're going to win in the centre as well, but it really remains to be seen how catastrophic this loss over here could prove to be, because they did send over a lot of men. And they are ultimately going to lose over here. The Nazgul being recommitted to the fight with the Athelian Rangers, and in fact I think more units are being committed, 2 more units of Gondor infantry. I think they realise they've committed so much over to this front that if they can just hold out a little longer, the attackers are going to lose too many men on the other 2 fronts. You can see over here these Sons of Durin going toe to toe with the Temple Guard and the Temple Inquisitors, and they're going to win. Other than the Black Numenorian units we have over here, it's only really archers that are out of ammunition, and what's left of the Nazgul and the Witches. The Athelian Rangers don't really stand much of a chance in a fight like this, but the Sons of Durin, they lift, man. Meanwhile, if we look, there's still some units down there. Heavy Goblin Crossbowmen, Orc Bodyguards, Blackback Mountain Berserkers, so the Misty Mountains, they are determined to smash through here. There's also some Dunland Veterans, very depleted units. There's still enemy skirmishers, the Veterans of Osgiliath, still there, still providing support. There goes Dane, finally. Oh, he was down there fighting the Blackback Berserker, so the Guards of Khazad-dûm really did chase the enemy quite far. Now the Sons of Durin being attacked by Dunland Veterans as well. That's more armour-piercing damage they're going to be subjected to. They will finally start to lose over here, I think. But not after they've reaped a terrible toll on the attackers. And then if we look over here, we can see what remains of the Nazgul and the Witches burrowing into this unit of Gondor infantry. Gondor infantry trying to sort of distract the attackers, I think, because I think they do. The defenders could very easily win on the other 2 fronts. We see these Veterans of Osgiliath doing the same. Good for Gondor. They're doing a good job. The Veterans of Osgiliath are also firing. And we can see the Orc Bodyguards and the Heavy Goblin Crossbows. The Veterans of Osgiliath targeting the Heavy Goblin Crossbows. They were definitely committed prematurely. They needed those skirmishers gone before they sent forward the crossbowman. We can actually see this unit of Loke Flagrim is finally being targeted by the bodyguards and will finally be destroyed. The Veterans of Osgiliath do need to run, however, otherwise they will find themselves suffering the wrath of the Blackback Mountain Berserkers, and that is not a fight they're going to win. These Gondorian infantrymen are going to break as well in the face of Nazgul, Witchers, Uruk Bodyguard, and now Blackback Berserkers with a brutal charge. I can't imagine the Gondor infantry sticking around in this fight for too much longer. There are still Sons of Durin, still 9 of them remaining. There's still some Ironfoot crossbows as well shooting into the flank. Madness. If we look over here, the defenders should win here in the middle. There is still a fight going on, but it's not really a big fight. You can see that if you can see them amongst the corpses, there are still some heavy goblin spears here and there. But ultimately, the dwarves have managed to defend this position. Admittedly, it was the easiest position to defend. They've still done a very good job. Meanwhile, over here, looks as though Gondor are going to be victorious over here as well. So the attackers have put all their eggs into one basket on the other front. The front where they've already lost a good amount of men. In fact, they have got some Blackback Berserkers coming up here, but I don't think that's going to be enough to force their way through this front. The Pelagia Marines are still firing. The Blackwatch Legion, largely gone. The Heavy Goblin Halberds and the Blackback Berserkers, I don't think they're going to be able to force their way through this amount of Fountain Guard. Over here then, we see the Orc Bodyguards. I think they dealt with what was left of those Heavy Goblin, well, those Ironfoot crossbows. The Gondor infantry is routing. The Nazgul and the Temple Inquisitors finishing off what remains of the Sons of Durin. The Witchers doing what they can as well. So the attackers, with the death of this Erebor infantry and the Heavy Goblin crossbows, firing at something. Well, regardless, the attackers do have victory on this flank, and they need to hurry. They need to get all of these high-tier units into the rear of those dwarves. And then it's going to come down to whether or not Gondor on the far left there have got enough to see it through, I think. I think the defenders have got this, you know. If we look here, there's still a 5% difference here. And there's still going to be well, there's quite a long battle left. You can see there's way over 10,000 frames. So there's going to be a good amount of manoeuvring. In fact, on this front over here, the dwarves have been victorious. I think they're actually going to retreat. They're going to retreat to this position over here in the left side of the map. And rightly so, because I do think they're going to have victory over here. The Blackback Berserkers, they're a very strong unit, and they will inflict quite a few casualties on these Gondorians. But there isn't enough of them, and they're not survivable enough to really wreak too much of a terrible toll on this very solid Gondorian front line. Might just get a screenshot if I'm able. Actually, no, I'll wait for that. I'll do that another time. I don't want to risk it crashing after this. But yes, in fact, if we look, well, looking forwards, most of my other replays that I've been sent are humongously long. Like there's a Minas Tirith one which is 70,000 frames. There's one on Gundabad which is 91,000 frames, and it's only a 3v3. So I'm very confused as to how that can be the case. But even so, I definitely didn't have enough time to do that today. But I think the next one after this will be a siege. It will be a Dol Guldur siege that I'll show, and we'll see how that goes. Because these do take a deceptively long time to make. And here we can see the Wardens of the White Tower getting into this line, and this will hasten the demise of the Misty Mountains units. In fact, the Blackback Berserkers taking a few casualties, but they are certainly inflicting a fair share as well. Let's go and see what's happening over here. There's still a blue triangle, so do the attackers still have a unit? They do. Unbelievably, the attackers are technically going to win on this front, because the Heavy Goblin Spears are going to beat these pikemen. Having said that, it's very much the definition of a Pyrrhic victory. What's going on here? Oh, Dragon's Wrath crossbowman. They have been left behind. Dark Elven King. Amongst the corpses of the wargs and their comrades. Here we can see what really remains for the attackers, and their hopes are over here, and it's mostly very depleted but very elite units of Temple Inquisitors, Nazgul, Uruk Bodyguard, Temple Guard, Uruk Archers. They're not elite, but the Witches are. Blackback Berserkers are a pretty healthy unit of them, Orc Bodyguards. These Heavy Goblin Crossbowmen could be the last hope. We shall see. But yes, the dwarves retreating back to the side of their ally. Ooh. So we're going to be staying over here for a little while, it would seem. On this Gondorian front line, exactly the sort of fight they like to be in. The Fountain Guard really proving their worth. The defenders clearly had quite a lot of money, but then the defenders need a lot of money to survive an extra army. And it's not like the attackers had terrible armies.
Our men have fought long and are becoming tired.
Only now are they becoming tired. What troopers they are. You can see there's one Blackwatch Legionnaire still alive, going toe to toe with a Gondorian infantryman. Well, there goes the Runic General, dead at the hands of the Misty Mountains Orc Bodyguard. Actually, we've got some veterans of Osgiliath coming down here. They still have their bows out, so it could be that they want to try and... Those Heavy Goblin crossbows are still firing, little by little. Again, this Misty Mountains attack will fail, but at this point, if they can do enough damage, then that will be very key. Because while the attackers don't have a lot of men coming from the other way, it's still very elite. They still might be able to pull it off, the attackers, yeah. These Snaga skirmishers. Bravely going up against one of the most elite units Gondor can field. Certainly the most iconic in the Fountain Guard. I do like their tower shields. The shielded variant of the Fountain Guard are one of my favourite additions to Gondor. And here we can see they are actually just going to force their way through the Snaga. The Snaga that are wavering, and then they're going to get in behind the Halberdiers and start to put some pressure on from the side. Those Blackback Berserkers have really done a really good job against those Fountain Guard at the front line. Gondor infantry, Wardens of the White Tower. The veterans of Osgiliath and the shielded Fountain Guard forcing their way through, though. The Snaga skirmishers breaking, running for the hills. Meanwhile, what's going on over here? The chanting of the Blackback Berserkers. The Orc Bodyguards dealing with what remains of a spear unit, the Ironfoot Pikes. They definitely don't want to pursue them. They need to hurry and get into the rear of this Gondorian position, because we're approaching the final 10,000 frames, where it will all be decided. What's going on here? Blackback Berserkers are running, everything else is routing. It'll be interesting to see how this goes. Well, considering that they're routing, and the Blackback Berserkers are leaving combat, as it were, I'll make a little cut until we get into the final stand, I think. As you can see, there was a lot of manoeuvring going on, because now we only have 3,000 frames left, so the battle will be decided here and now. And yes, Gondor retreated essentially with the dwarves to this corner of the map before they got surrounded. So it will be interesting to see how they do. Blackback Berserkers' victory seems certain. They got a downhill charge into this shield wall position. And now the Nazgul, yeah, it looks like the attackers are going to win, honestly. You can see these Fountain Guardsmen. These Wardens of the White Tower will need to be the saving grace. We can see the crossbows there trying to shoot into the sides. And it might just be a case of the attackers had the elite infantry that they needed at the end. And it might be that committal from the dwarves to send forward their Mithril Guard and their Guards of Khazad-dûm out into the wilderness to chase down skirmishers might be their undoing. Because those two units in this situation, and I'd be thinking it would go the other way. The Gondorians may still win, but it's going to be a pretty tough ask, I think. But these very high tier units, stuff like Blackback Berserkers, stuff like Gondor Infantry and Palagir Marines in melee are going to be worth next to nothing. The Fountain Guard will do okay, but they're still not terrific against these very high tier shock troops. And it's here where I worry. The Blackback Berserkers, the crossbows as well, might be the thing that does them in eventually. Because it's mostly defensive units that they've got left. Units that do quite poorly against Blackback Berserkers. The Wardens of the White Tower, defeat seems certain. Only a military genius could win this battle. Not a good sign at all. The Fountain Guard are now suffering the same fate because they're being attacked in the side by Temple Inquisitors. The hill advantages the attackers now. Yep. It was looking so good for the defenders for such a long time. But ultimately, like it always turns out, the mistakes that the defenders make are always amplified far more than the mistakes the attackers make. And I honestly don't think the attackers made too many mistakes. I think the way they chose to engage the line with their weak shock troops first against the pike wall probably wasn't the best choice. But having said that, the way that they continuously reinforce their advance in stages, wearing down the defence in just the right way, choosing when to push with their mass, I think the attackers did a very good job. The defenders did a good job as well at responding to that for the most part. The alliance, the Gondorian and the Dwarven troops that were sent over to help Rune hold the line were very necessary. If they left Rune to their fate, they would have lost this battle long ago. But even so, that one decision to chase down skirmishers with slow-moving, heavily armoured dwarves, that might be it. That might be why they lose. We can see the crossbows are they out of ammunition? No, they're idle. You can see victory is almost a certainty. Defeat seems certain. I don't think these defensive Gondorian troops are going to carry the day. Heavy Goblin Halberds that came back from routing have also rejoined the fight. More chaff. More fodder. You can see the Nazgul are still alive. There's still 7 Nazgul. And they are so difficult to kill in melee, especially when it gets into the late game like this, because they have such high melee skill. The purple capes of the Fountain Guard. We're heading towards, inside the last 2,000 frames. You can see there's this small unit of heavy goblin crossbowmen, which is plugging away on that Gondorian line for some time, not making too much of an impact, but still, attrition matters. These Blackback Berserkers, do they have the staying power to finish off these Wardens of the White Tower and claim victory for the Orcs here in the Iron Hills? This is a very fun map, and I've only used it for a free-for-all before, but it's definitely a good one to use for an attack-defend sort of scenario because of how the terrain can be used, and I think the defenders did use it well. But ultimately, these Orc bodyguards, they're not going to go away easily either. There's times to it, I think. How are they doing over here? I mean, the Orcs over here are pretty thinly stretched, but The Nazgul and the Blackback Berserkers are just too much for standard Gondor infantry and Lasarnak nobles to deal with, and there goes the Gondorian general, cut down by an Orc bodyguard. One of the players has admitted defeat. Probably Dark Elven King, I would imagine. Yes, we are into the final 1,000 frames, and at this point it's fairly obvious where this one is going. The Orcs will have victory. The defenders put up a good fight, but I do think the way that the Orcs chose to attack was also very well thought out, so I do think that they deserve the win in the end. Certainly a well-played battle by both sides. Fun to watch as well, unlike the 2 siege battles that I had to sit through yesterday.
Very much in our favour. Victory will
I would have 3 videos ready to put up by now, but now I'm only going to have 1, so that means this week is likely going to be pretty sparse in terms of content for me to upload. I'll do my best to record, but it's very difficult with work and university. And there we go, player has admitted defeat. Gondorian Smith throws down his blade. And there we go. So Master Blaster getting the most kills. As Gundabad, that's not surprising at all. The Dwarves getting the most kills for the defenders. Again, they had a very nice defensive position, and their elite infantry probably did a lot of heavy lifting for the defenders. The Witchers getting a good amount of kills. The Hammer Guard getting a huge amount of kills in that central position, despite the fact the attackers ultimately lost there. Guardians of Khan doing a decent job. Scourge Raiders, depending on whether or not they were targeted by Archer Fire. The Berserkers actually managed to be shut down pretty effectively by the defenders. A good spread of kills, but ultimately it was that Hammer Guard getting 422 kills. That was impressive, considering you didn't really see them. But yes, that was a nice fun free-for-all on the Iron Hills, and I hope you'll join me for the Dol Guldur siege that I have up next, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.